Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. In today's episode, Virginia discusses how the breakdown of internal liberty within the family structure manifests as physical dis-ease and outlines the trinitarian pathway back to structural order. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Years ago, I was asked to come in a leadership position to a company called Heritage Makers. And I didn't have bandwidth nor margin in my life to collaborate or participate with that company, but I did. And I ended up building a large organization. But during one of our conferences, I was asked by the founder to give him a definition for heritage. That was my job. That was my role. That would be the framework of my entire talk. And I remember thinking, what is heritage? I don't know. I mean, I know what everybody thinks. I know what everyone references, but I really don't know. So I began to ponder that question for weeks, months, actually. After approximately 2 months or so, maybe 2.5 months, it just came to me that heritage is the womb of our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our passions. Heritage is ultimately, when it's all said and done, the story that explains us. And when I spoke at that conference and delivered that particular speech, the CEO of the company came up before he asked me to stay on stage for another minute. There was about, 500-600 men and women. And he said, when you look out in the audience, what do you see in the context of what you just said? And I said, I see hope for America. And I remember I started crying. I was just really choked up with emotion. And he asked me why. Why I saw hope for America, and what did I see out there that caused me to say that? And I remember saying that women shape the character and conscience of the next generation. They have an enormous amount of power in their home. And if they can use that power to come alongside their husbands and their children, that unthinkable transformative change could take place in the hemorrhaging heart of the American home. Because disintegration of the family, of the nuclear family, has been a compounding theme, obviously, for some time. And now we're seeing the full depth and breadth of it manifested in what's happening all over the country, but specifically in our inner cities where we have absent fathers from the lives of their children. And I think that's important in the context of this new module we're transitioning into, and it's the heritage of rest. Because if we are going to establish a rhythm of rest and change the disciplines that make up our days, we need to ask ourselves hard questions. And perhaps a good place to start is, what is the womb of my hopes, my dreams, my fears, and my passions? What does that look like for me? And if we take into context the conversations we've been having about the pilgrimage of rest, the illustration of rest, why rest, we ask ourselves, we realize that, hey, our story didn't begin in our home. it began in the home of our parents. And I can't confine myself just by my interpretation of the life experiences I've had. But it might serve me well to become curious about my mom and my dad, my siblings, my grandmother, my grandfather. As a matter of fact, I wonder what it would look like if we asked our listening audience to show up for those conversations with their relatives with one simple motive. And that is, or one simple, maybe initiative, curiosity, with a motive to just wonder. Because here's where I think a lot of the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease is developing in our families, in our relationships, certainly in our institutions, and absolutely in our nation. Healthy conversation, compelled by curiosity and a desire to understand perhaps things we're overlooking, is not the driving force behind our relationships, our conversations. And I think that's problematic. So why don't we all start in our primary spheres of influence? And it's easy to do considering we're speaking about the heritage of rest, and show up with curiosity about our moms and our dads, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their passions. What was the highlight of their life? What are the lowlights, the highlights and the lowlights? What are the black holes that perhaps they never found a way out of? What surprised them most about aging? What surprised them most about success, failures? What surprised them about life? If they could change one thing about their life, what would it be? If they could change a decision about their life that they made, what would that decision be? And what informs their desire or their perspective now that would cause them to think they wish they could have done that differently? And I think if we can make those people we engage in conversation feel safe enough that we're not engaging in this conversation for any other reason than perhaps we've never shown up with curiosity before. You know, mom, dad, or child, the mom and dad can do it with the child too. You know, I engage you assuming I know everything about you. And I realize I haven't been curious about anything. And your story didn't begin in the confinements of your home, but they began in the life of your parents. And I've done you a great injustice by assuming I knew and understood all these things about you, but I never asked you a question. And I'd like to change that. I was wondering if we could meet maybe every Friday and just show up in each other's lives with a little more curiosity. I think that could be transformative. And not just our lives, but in the lives of people we love and the lives of people we're angry with, we resent, and the lives of people that we think we understand and we judge harshly, in the lives of people we don't want to hear anything they have to say. Maybe we need to practice showing up with curiosity. It might be fruitful to make a list of who those people are and ask them to meet for tea. I like high tea because it's peaceful, there's food. I don't know. Maybe it was such a big part of my heritage that I enjoy just sitting down with a cup of tea over something because it invites conversation in my world. But in your world, it might be a cup of coffee. It might be sitting at the park. It might be going for a walk somewhere at the beach. But whatever that is, I would like to invite our listening audience as we embark on this conversation of the heritage of rest, if we show up with some curiosity, so we can have a little more context to receive the things that we're inviting you to consider. I suppose I'm making the observation in myself, I might add, and others, that we have a tendency to show up for conversations and for relationship with a great deal of assumptions. But we do not have a tendency to give other people the benefit of the doubt, nor do we exercise the patience or the grace to give him an opportunity or a hot minute to say things that we find uncomfortable and follow up with other questions. I think it's difficult. These are difficult transactions, but I think if we do that, we can begin to understand, we can begin to face our hopes. We can begin to face, how about this, our fears, for one. And we can begin to become familiar with their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their passions. But I think as we learn to listen a little bit more with curiosity about the people we love, the people in our inner circles, the people that we're responsible for or come in contact with regularly, I think it will change us faster than almost anything we can do. If we can just show up and be and abide and be present with curiosity as we engage people in our primary spheres of influence, especially in our nuclear family, mom, dad, siblings, and just discipline ourselves or just decide that we're going to be intentional about asking them questions we've never asked before, with the intention of understanding them better, seeing them more accurately, hearing them more clearly, and understanding them more deeply. I think it's not only going to change the dynamic of the relationship and change that person, but change us. But above all, I think it will inform the womb of our own hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our passions, and how they were perhaps influenced, informed, shaped, guided, distorted, maybe, by things we thought we understood, but we didn't. We only saw in part. But I think these conversations can give us an opportunity to see all those things more clearly. And why do I think this is important? Because the loss of identity, I think, is the thorn in our flesh. It's the pit in our soul. It's the thing that derails our lives when we don't have a sense of self, a sense of being, a sense of identity. I think it corrupts our view. It taints and can potentially corrupt the view we have of ourselves and of others. You don't need a therapist to do this. You need a heart and a will that says, I would like to change. I'd like to broaden. I would like to explore better ways of interpreting, of understanding my life and the life of those around me in the context of where we came from. Because if we don't understand our past, and I see this all the time, we're destined to repeat a history that you could easily dodge should you have more information. The curious conversation that I'm inviting our listening audience to consider isn't to get information for yourself. It's more to accept the fact that we're all talking at each other and nobody's listening. So the purpose of the curiosity that we show up to these conversations with isn't to get anything, but it's really to give my full attention and let this person know that I desire to fully see, hear, and understand them. It has nothing to do with agreement. It has nothing to do with compliance. It all has to do with love. Because in a family setting, we tend to take each other so much for granted because we've been around each other for a lifetime. And I think when familiarity, what do they say, breeds measures of contempt. But I don't think that's a cruel thing. I think it's a reasonable oversight of things that we miss. They just compound into contempt because life moves so fast. We don't sit at a sink and do dishes together anymore and dry them and put them away. We don't set tables together. We don't cook together. We don't drive for distances. We're not plowing fields, working gardens, doing chores Saturday mornings like we used to, with music blasting in the house while dad and brother and sister are outside doing lawn, mowing the lawn, planting flowers. Families, by and large, are so involved in honestly jumping through hurdles and going through hoops and stuff that they're doing, programs. It's like our whole life is stinking programmed for us. And there isn't much planning. And last weekend, for example, there was a situation with a family where the family needed to be together and the grandparents were inviting the older children raising teenagers to their home to be with family, to connect, to kind of get your bearings, to get grounded again. Just a barbecue, floating in the pool, no big thing. The potentiality of a few tasks that the whole group could work on as a family together. Art, music, eating, leisure, tea, dessert, lazy, restful Sunday afternoon was completely interrupted by friends coming over and inviting one of the children to go have a water balloon fight around the corner. So the parents changed the entire plans because this other thing came up. And given the tension and the stress in the whole family and some of the things they're trying to work on by way of parenting, they went, one child went one way, the other child went another way, and there it goes. And the family remains fractured. And it just occurred to me that we really need to become intentional about spending time together with people we love, people we're struggling with, people we're confused about, people that we've drifted from in our families, And instead of showing up with judgment, I think it's productive to show up with curiosity and have some life-giving conversations. Why? Because family is a divine institution. The first and foremost foundational divine institution that we find in hieroglyphics since the beginning of time. That is the foundation sphere of government. Then comes the church and then the state. There's only 3 divine institutions, and the family is the womb of our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our passions. There is a story that explains us. But again, we ask these questions of our parents, our grandparents, and those living because our story doesn't just begin there. It has deeper roots in these other narratives. I'd encourage everyone to even keep a journal of their findings and document their findings. When there's people that have hurt us, betrayed us, disparaged us, our character and our integrity, our motives, our intent, and our best intentions. I think those are the most important people to reach out and contact, because there's an opportunity for reconciliation. There's an opportunity for redemption. But above all, there's an opportunity to establish some clarity on what happened. Our life was going so great. I never asked you, did I miss something? With curiosity. I've asked you out of anger. I've asked you out of resentment, right? But I've never asked you from a place of curiosity. What was going on in your heart and in your life during all this? And obviously you're not obligated to disclose any of that to me, but I just wanted you to know that I genuinely care. Because I've known you to be a lovely person, or I've known you to be thoughtful. I've known you to be kind. I don't know. This is out of character for you. And I feel blindsided and betrayed and all of those things, but I could sit here and tell you a lot of things I feel about you. But if I'm honest with myself, I never picked up a phone to talk to you directly and have a conversation, a curious conversation about, wow, what was going on with you during all that time? It can be a parent that beat you. It can be a sibling who stole something from you. It can be somebody that cheated on you, just betrayed your confidence in one way or another. I think that's obviously a horrible situation, and those are difficult things. But the purpose is that that person feels completely seen, heard, and understood by you. And the benefit to you is immeasurable. And the blessing to them, I don't think you'll ever live to see the fruit of. Because you're extending someone grace that doesn't deserve it. And how many times have you been extended grace within the confinements of a family, within the limitations of a family? How many times have you been extended grace? when you didn't deserve it. So I don't know. I encourage those kinds of conversations start with the people that you have the hardest time with. That's who you start with. The people that you are most confused about, the people that have hurt you the most in your family. And remember, the aim and the goal is to hear what they have to say and listen to them with your heart without judgment. And I think a good place to start is to say, this is a very difficult conversation for me, but you were my biggest priority. Because you're my sister, you're my mother, you're my father, I thought you were my best friend. I always considered you. You want to say, I considered you my best friend. You're my grandmother, you're my grandfather. And I have a lot of judgments about you and about the situation, about the family and about the relationships. But I've never given you the respect and the honor of asking you things that I've just assumed about you, and that's not fair. So I'd like to ask you to forgive me for that, but I'd like to show up with curiosity for this friendship and for this relationship. The transformative tidal wave that will come from hundreds of thousands of conversations like that is immeasurable. How about this? From one conversation, 2 conversations, 3, 5, dozens, hundreds, thousands. Is immeasurable. It doesn't mean you have to walk away liking each other or having the best relationship ever. You're not trying to restore. I don't believe in restoration in that way. You're trying to reconcile confusing things that you carry that cause you to be judgmental and angry, bitter, resentful, condescending, maybe not directly to that person, but to other people in your sphere of influence, because your heart will be hardened. Your heart will be tainted by these things that you'd rather not think about or you neglect to handle. And you'll never fully understand who you are and step into your own identity if you're not willing to become curious about that of another. And I think part of what's prompting this as we lead into discussing this, as we start discussing this topic of heritage, is there's so much judgment. I find it repelling. I find it revolting. There's so much judgment, condemnation, labeling, cynicism, just dismissive behavior about the humanity of people that we're in relationship with, that we disagree with, that we don't understand, that we honestly disparage. And I don't think that's acceptable anymore. I don't think that's productive. We're living in an age where the measure of confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that is coming out of homes, that is constituting so much, that is reflected in local government and national government. And you've got to ask yourself, what's behind this? Because it is not natural and it is not normal to disparage each other for things that we do ourselves. I've said it before, but years ago I heard the term snowflakes, and I thought, that's so offensive. Why are they calling the hemorrhaging heart of a generation that we raised? Why are we disparaging the thing we created without taking personal responsibility for the fact that if they're the snowflakes, then we're the storm? Snowflakes will melt in the light of the sun and become a life-giving force of water that brings life to the seeds that perhaps are dormant in the bitter storms. So I'm wondering, what are we doing here? And since when is tolerance me expressing my opinion without considering the merits of yours? Which side is screaming at the other? Which side is shooting the other? Where are the crimes coming from? Because that's a side that's lost the argument in a home, in a relationship, in a family, and in a church, and a state, and certainly in government. The side that's screaming, burning, destroying things, that's the side that's lost an argument. We don't want to do that in our families, in our homes, in our marriages, and in our relationships. We want to show up with curiosity. So I think we need to start building the kingdoms within us, right? The soil, cultivate the soil in our own hearts, show up with curiosity and wonder about the soil in the next person's life, in your home, and in these intimate and personal relationships, and show up with curiosity for that, for the things that are informing them. And of course, if somebody's resistant and refuses and denies, say thank you. I just wanted to extend you the courtesy of asking you questions and listening to you. If somebody lies and they continue lying, you don't have to correct them in that moment. I wanted to just walk away. This isn't a confrontation thing, I guess is what I'm saying. You can just walk away knowing that you did the right thing, giving a person an opportunity to explain themselves to you for no other reason than you never gave them an opportunity to do it before. Because of your own judgments, harsh judgments, and prejudices. And I guess that's a good question. Are you the one burning the house down by your anger and your temper tantrums and your disregard for the sovereignty of another person in your family? Because if you're the one that's losing your shiz, humiliating, insulting, lying, then you've lost a narrative. You need to wonder what's happening inside of you. What is the womb of your hopes, your dreams, your fears, your passions? What's causing you to sabotage? Right? The sensitivity of maybe while I'm speaking, you're thinking about people that have tried to do that in your life and you humiliated them, you verbally filleted them because they betrayed your trust. They let you down. I don't know. Maybe somebody has tried to do that in your life. Well, that's the person you should go to and say, hey, remember 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 2 years ago, 2 weeks ago, when you tried to talk to me and I disrespected you. Would you forgive me for that? What made you want to come talk to me? What prompted you to show up with curiosity to ask me about me? It's okay, I guess, to say, would you forgive me? If the injury was a week, 2 weeks, 2 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago, it doesn't matter. Show up with curiosity. And if right now the first thought that crosses through your mind is, Virginia, I'm afraid, I can't do that. Take a deep breath. Take another deep breath and another deep breath. And hit pause, and call that person right now. Don't think about it. And say, I think I owe you a conversation, or I owe you a listen that I've never extended you. I owe you a visit I've never paid. A conversation we've never had. Are you free? Or can you join me for tea or coffee or a meal? Be careful with meals. Covenants are made over meals. So you need to be fully prepared to show up with curiosity if you're going to have a meal. I think the goal here is, when we think about our heritage, we tend to think, oh, I grew up in the most perfect, amazing family. Everything's perfect. Not so. I grew up in the worst family ever. I don't even want to think about them. I want to forget I even belonged to them. That's not entirely true either. I grew up in a highly dysfunctional home that was very painful. And I will not, I don't want to, it has nothing to do with who I am today. Actually, I spent most of my life running from that. That's not true either. You can't. So our families of origin, especially our moms and dads and our ancestors, they inform so much of our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our passions. They really hold the key to many of the stories that explain us. So the invitation is to show up with curiosity so that you can live with greater measures of freedom. We're all threads in this beautiful tapestry, and we live looking at not at the beautiful tapestry we're creating, but we live looking at all the loose threads and the knots and the sloppy exchanges, connections, transitions of colors and design and all this. We live looking at all that workmanship. But how often do we turn that tapestry over to celebrate? Wow, I had no idea the other side would be this beautiful. I'm inviting people to consider this a worthwhile exercise so they can celebrate the tapestry that makes up all of our lives. I think I want to start this new movement to reject everything that separates us, because it continues to fuel the confusion, chaos, and dis-ease that is so destructive. And I don't know. That's what I've been pondering these last few days. That's the heritage of rest. We're part of a bigger family than our nuclear family. And if we can break through the confinements and the deception that our nuclear family is so bad and everybody else is so good, that's a lie from the pit of hell. It's not true. We all share limitations. We all live with confinements. But the womb of our hopes, our dreams, our fears, and our passions are the fruit of many of the experiences we've had. The question is, what do we consent to? What are we going to build on? What is the beauty of our story that can bring life to others? How can we encourage others to find beauty in their own story? To bring life to others. That's why I think the greatest leader that ever lived was Jesus of Nazareth, that invited humanity to rest. Reconcile the conflict within yourself. You're part of a way bigger story that you can trust. And I came to bear fruit, bear witness of that story. And the fruit of it will immediately become evident in your life. You will see the goodness of God in the land of the living if you can see your heritage beyond the limitations of your parents' best intentions and that of your grandparents. They had to do the same thing you're doing, show up to live in the competing narratives of their generation, very confusing times. So be curious and live free.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about R.E.S.T, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of R.E.S.T. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of R.E.S.T, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to R.E.S.T with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.